Awesome. Good. All right. Welcome. It's going to be okay. The information that we have to give you, our part of it is brief because we want you all to be able to have some information and then have the opportunity to ask us questions. So we've done a little bit of the housekeeping, and if Laura wants to go to the next slide. Our purpose today is to give you some updates on allowable costs from the U.S. Department of Ed, show you an overview of what the reimbursement process will look like once your application has been approved and you're ready to start asking for funds in whatever ways that you've been approved. So whether that's reimbursement or the provision of services, which I think for the sake of our meeting today, you might hear us refer to that number 3 as provision of services or procurement process. We'll be using those two terms interchangeably to mean the same thing, and that is entering into a contracted agreement using the agency to help with the contracting process. We'll talk about what the transfer of title means, as well as provide time for a question and answer and next steps. Some important reminders, and we are recording this, so you'll have access to the slideshow, but the application is due April 30th. When the program team receives your application, we have 30 days to do the consultation with you, and that process will begin as soon as we receive your application. The email to the AOE GEER EANS at vermont.gov is the fastest way for you to ask a question of the program team and get a response back. And sometimes that response is thank you for your question. We need to ask some other people for the details of your of the question, but we will absolutely get back to you quickly. Somebody is monitoring that email every day of the week. During your consultation, which happens once your application has been submitted, 2 members of the team will review your application elements with you, give you an overview of the reimbursement and provision of services, and answer any questions that you have. And then applicants might need to make amendments to the application, and you will absolutely have the ability to do that. So those are some reminders. You will hear that information repeated throughout the rest of the time that folks are talking within different elements of what we wanted to provide you as information today. And we wanted to show just briefly the path to that the application takes. I'm picturing in my head the Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill becomes a law. And Jill has her hand up.
Yeah, Meg, I was going to say, because of in the interest of time, because
that's fine.
Yeah, so Meg made a beautiful flow chart. Everyone will have it available and we can always ask questions, but I think we should probably jump to the next part because we want to leave open for Q&A at the end. So,
and that's totally fine with me because then I get to stop talking and turn it over to Jill. So thank you, everybody. Again, we're very happy that you're here and we apologize for the confusion.
Yeah, thank you all for bearing with me. I was scrambling as quickly as I could there. Okay, so I think what we really wanted to focus on, we've sort of done the introduction and now we want to get to what have been some of the questions that folks have been sending that we have been working as quickly and closely with the U.S. Department of Education to get clarity around. So we have some updates around allowable costs. We also have some updates around transfer of title, literally hot off the presses. So we had a meeting with USED this morning where we were able to get some clarity on this. So I would also say that we have that preliminary, sorry about the cat, preliminary information for you. And now we as a team need to actually come back together and sort of work out what that means. She does this to me every time I have some sort of webinar. So Laura, would you mind advancing to the next slide? Okay. Please go down. All right, so the first is that we've had several questions come in from the field around the use of GEER EANS for payroll or salaries. And so we kind of made a basic decision tree here, but some of the questions have been, you know, we have a teacher on staff, we'd like them to start running like an after-school tutoring program to address learning loss, or we would like to hire substitutes in the fall or over the summer so that we don't run into any staffing issues in case of like, you know, someone needing to quarantine or something like that. So we've just sort of gotten this additional clarity from US Ed. So the short answer is if you have school staff and the question is, can we use our GEER funds and get reimbursement? The answer is no. And US Ed has been pretty clear around this. If you have school staff and you would like to use that staff member for, again, something like setting up tutoring after school above and beyond their usual contract, they can, through that procurement / provision of services process through the AOE, become like a third-party contractor. And there's an asterisk next to that because there are some sort of additional steps that need to be taken around that. And after I give the quick overview here, I'll actually kick it to Cassandra or Shelley to sort of explain what some of those are. The question around, can we use our GEER EANS funds to hire an independent contractor and get reimbursed? The answer is no. But again, you could do that through the procurement process. So Cassandra, I realize that I kind of jumped on your slide a little bit here, but you were going to explain some of the details around like that procurement process and the differences between that approach and the reimbursement approach.
Yeah, no, I think that you hit it in kind of interest of time. All I will say is it's just really important. We can't kind of say it enough because we want you to understand that we cannot reimburse you for salaries or benefits, those payroll costs associated with your staff. So I think the real message is that if you have ideas for services that you might need to receive, is those will need to go through the procurement process, and we'll help you through that with the consultation that will occur. So again, I think it's just really good to just keep that delineation that any payroll cost of any staff at your independent school would be a no.
Okay, great. And in the interest of time, we'll keep cruising along, and we realize that there'll probably be follow-up questions. So go ahead and put those in the chat as they come up, or we'll have like the hand raise at the end. We're in the process of getting some clear answers around laptops or other educational technology. We've seen this as one of the kind of main costs that folks have. While we are clear that if you've already purchased laptops or other ed tech, it is eligible for past reimbursement. It is eligible for potential future reimbursement or through the procurement process. We do want to clarify a couple of things here, and we'll talk more about the transfer of title when we get to that slide in just a moment. For reimbursement, a requirement of all reimbursement is the transfer of title. And again, I'm going to kind of draw that out a little bit more, but just want to be clear that if you are looking to get reimbursement for laptops, when you submit for your reimbursement, you will also be completing a transfer of title. That is the process by which the federal government is allowing the Agency of Education to reimburse you for costs that you incur. So that is how we are sort of required to do that process. We are also working right now to get clarity around some potential software requirements for any state-owned laptop. And of course, once you transfer title, or if we procure those for you, you need 50 laptops. You know, you put that into your application. Our team partners with you to procure those laptops. They are state-owned laptops. And so we are actually working as quickly as we possibly can to get some clarity around software that is present on those laptops. And as soon as we know that information, we will share it with you. So that is sort of our update right now, is it's available for all three. We just want to signal to folks that there is that transfer of title. These will be state-owned laptops, and there may be some additional criteria around the software. Laura, if you want to jump to the next one. Okay, and then this was one of our very new hot off the presses. So I've got the language of the allowable cost at the top. So the allowable cost in GEER EANS was phrased as improving ventilation systems, including windows or portable air purification systems, to ensure healthy air in the non-public school. And that phrasing that's in the statutory language, ventilation systems, has unfortunately caused a bit of confusion, not only among all the states, frankly. So this is something that we've just learned today. So we generally understand, and I think that all of you do on the call as well, that when you hear ventilation system, you think of an HVAC system, and I think that's a really natural understanding. The way that U.S. Department of Ed is sort of phrasing that is more of an indoor air quality kind of question. And so one thing that has come up is that allowable cost, improving ventilation systems, including windows or portable air purification systems, runs up against other regulations. And I've included that kind of language in that citation. So that regulation, the 34 CFR, requires that equipment and supplies purchased with EANS funds must be able to be removed from a non-public school without remodeling the non-public school facility. So that really, in reality, kind of limits the use of these costs. So the simple answer is, some of you have reached out because you are looking to install an HVAC system. And the simple answer is you cannot use GEER EANS funds to put in a new HVAC system, install new windows, or put in like permanent barriers. So let's say you needed to refurbish a classroom and you wanted to install a permanent wall of some sort. We're not going to be able to use GEER EANS funds to do that because we would not be able, the agency would not be able to go in and remove them without having to, rip apart your walls. There is the potential, if you are an approved independent school, for accessing the indoor air quality grant, which is currently sitting with the General Assembly and hopefully will be passed soon. And I would really encourage folks, if you have that need, please use myself, Jill Briggs-Campbell, as the point of contact for that. You can send those emails to our team email and they will direct them to me because I'm the person kind of with my hand on the pulse for that particular program. If you are looking at portable items, portable air purifiers, replacement air filters for a current HVAC system, plexiglass barriers, the answer is yes, and those can be done through either the reimbursement process or the procurement process through AOE. And then what we did learn today that is really new information is that there is the potential that certain costs, the repair of old windows, repair to HVAC systems, the example that was given by our partner at USAID was perhaps you have a leaky roof that's caused your insulation to become moldy, and that's being, that unhealthy mold is being spread around your school. There is the potential for GEER EANS funds to be used for that. With the big asterisk, please reach out to us with the specifics of your project, because we're almost going to have to address this, based on the specific, the details are really important on whether or not it can be allowable and whether or not sort of reimbursement or procurement might be the better route. So if you have those kind of specific questions, reach out to us. We are absolutely available to partner, and we're going to sort of work through that together. Our goal is 100% to be able to support you all as best we can. And at the same time, we don't want any cost disallowed, right? So we don't want to learn later that that big project that you did, it turns out those funds were not allowed. So we're going to be really careful in protecting you all from having any costs disallowed. So that's new information, though. There is more flexibility than we had previously been told. And so that's actually really good news in a lot of ways. Laura, would you mind doing the next slide? Okay. So that's sort of our update on allowable costs. I'm sure you may have other questions as well. And so I'm trying to hustle a little bit here. Wanted to sort of give a high level. We've been talking about procurement or provision of services. And so wanted to just very high level help you all understand what that will look like as a workflow process. So you will submit your application. And, you know, again, it might be something like 50 laptops, or it might be something like the changing of air filters, or it could be something like staffing for running an after-school tutoring program to address learning loss. So if those fall into the kind of approach or workflow of procurement, then what will happen is very early on in that consultation process, you'll begin working with Shelley Matz, who's on the call, and she is the agency's like contract and procurement guru and knows more than I will ever know about Bulletin 3.5 and all the state requirements. And so she is going to sort of shepherd you through that procurement and contracting process, and she will be your partner for the life of the goods or service. So she's really our subject matter expert and is excellent at doing this work. And so very early on, she'll sort of step in and help you through with that process. And you're welcome to reach out to Shelley with questions or details around that. Laura, would you mind jumping to the next one? Great. The other track, of course, is the reimbursement process. So as we know from our program overview and from the statutory language, reimbursement is available back to March 13th of 2020. I'm, reminding everyone that you cannot ask for reimbursements for costs that you have already used another funding source for. So that's, we commonly refer to as double dipping, right? You want to be really careful that you've tracked those costs. Reimbursement can be requested on a rolling basis, meaning you don't have to just do one. You can do it several, or in the future as you need to. Want to signal that you'll need sort of 3 pieces of documentation. So you're going to need an invoice, a proof of receipt, which might be like a shipping label. So we want to signal to you ahead of time to save those shipping labels, and then proof of payment. You're also at the point of the reimbursement request. That's when you'll complete the transfer of title, which is the next slide. So hang in there. The transfer of title agreement and additional assurances. And then you're going to submit your reimbursement request with your documentation to John Liu, who is in our business office. He's going to be the point person for these funds. And we have the email address there. All of this will be captured in a reimbursement instruction form. I did want to show folks just really quickly. And so Laura, I'm going to steal the screen here. What this form looks like. And so it's just a really basic, can folks see the spreadsheet?
Yep.
Okay, great. It's just a really basic form. John has given us an example of the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, for those of us old enough to remember that. And so you're just going to, and you'll do this every time you submit a reimbursement. So if you do, 3 reimbursement requests, you'll submit 3 of these forms. And you'll see right away that your total agreement amount, your agreement number, which you'll be given when we approve your application, and then you'll see that these are broken out by the allowable costs. So this should look familiar from the budget in the application. And one thing to note is that ed technology, educational technology, which is just one single bucket in your budget line, actually needs to be broken into two separate things. This has to do with particular requirements around tracking that we have. So computers and laptops need to be tracked separately from other educational technology. So just to be aware of that. So once you get your applications approved and you're kind of looking at this, you want to start tracking your expenses by these separate spending costs here. And so you'll do this for, this is 313 through 323. So this is the backward looking reimbursement. And then a very, very similar document exists for the future looking reimbursement. So you'll, just kind of pick which tab you are going to be using. You will sign it, you will print it and scan it, and then you will email it to John Liu at the email address that I had there. So Laura, you can go ahead and pull up the PowerPoint again. And if you don't have the ability to scan an email, you can always send it in via regular mail. And we have folks, including John, who are in the office and are accepting reimbursement requests. So that's sort of what that form will look like. And again, we will have all of that posted with instructions up on the webpage. And then finally, the transfer of title. This has been obviously a really important topic. And we are hot off the presses again, just sort of got this decision point from US Ed today. And so we have kind of a preliminary answer, and then we are going to be developing this process and we'll have more information. So we know what the federal requirement is. In order for the agency to provide reimbursement for costs to independent schools, we must do this transfer of title agreement. And so what does this mean? So when you do that reimbursement request, there'll be a document. It will have a bunch of assurances. It will have an inventory list that you will complete, so 15 Chromebooks and one, specific brand camera or whatever it may be. 25 boxes of masks and latex gloves, whatever that inventory list is. Here's what we've learned as of today. We had asked the question, is there a way that schools at the end of the period of performance would be able to, have a way to hold on to these supplies and equipment? And so there's sort of two ways that this can happen. One is if the school participates in a federal program like Title I or Title II, and they can demonstrate that the supply or equipment continues to have an allowable cost under one of those programs, they can hold on to that equipment. The agency will still hold title. The other option is that there will be an opportunity at the end of period of performance for the school to purchase from the agency the supplier equipment at fair market value. And so that is a process that we need to wrap our own heads around and develop a little bit more. This information came in today, so we haven't really even had a chance to dive into it, but there will be that opportunity. So if you had, 50 Chromebooks and you would look at, we would be able to tell you what the fair market value of those Chromebooks is in September 2023 and offer you the opportunity to purchase them, at which point the title goes to you and they are yours. So that is new information. We're going to continue to develop it, but there is that opportunity to retain those services or the supplies and equipment. All right, and Laura, the last slide basically said, please continue to send in your questions to AOE, and once your application is submitted, you will be assigned a program team duo that will do consultation with you, and as needed, we'll bring in other folks from the team to help support you. So thank you for bearing with that little bit of a rushed presentation there. I think we can go ahead and open up to questions. I'm sure there are many. And so we're going to go ahead and jump over. Eric, I see your hand is up, so why don't you unmute and ask your question?
Thank you. My question is, so let's say we want to submit for 20 laptops. Is there a thing on the application where we, in the initial application that we have to complete by April 30th, that we have to indicate we want to do it by reimbursement or by provisions of services? Or is that just something that's decided after the application has been made and there's that review process?
Yeah, so Eric, that's a great question. So in the application, when you get to the budget section, there are 3 separate budget sections. One is past reimbursement, one is future, and one is provision of services. If during the consultation process, it makes more sense that you choose future reimbursement or provision of services, and you need to change something, you'll actually have the opportunity to amend your application. So when you need to pick one to submit your application, but if need be, you can change course during the consultation process if that arises.
Okay, so I shouldn't stress out too much about that choice in the initial application because we can adjust it with the review.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't have an answer of which one is better right now. It just is.
Yeah.
Okay. Great, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I see that guest asked, is this for GEER EANS 2 or the new funding from Biden's relief package? So that's actually a little bit of confusion there. So this is GEER EANS 1. The Biden's relief package, which comes from the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, that is GEER EANS 2. And horribly, they're calling it ARP EANS just to add more confusion. We don't have any information really on GEER EANS 2, except that it will only be procurement and no reimbursement will be available. And that is the absolute extent of the information that we have. So we are supposed to be getting that information, but I think that is an important question to signal to folks. There is a second program that's coming for independent schools, GEER EANS 2. It's $2.6 million. And we hope to have that information very soon. So there is the potential to also get additional funding. TBD, like hang tight on that. That info is coming. Let's see. So what type of equipment qualifies as other tech ed? Yeah, so that's a good question. So Dennis, what we've seen folks have applied for, and Meg, you've got your eyes on those applications even more than I do. So maybe I'll just let you jump in if you've got some answers on that one.
Sure. Well, according to US Ed, that what's included there is hardware, software, connectivity, assistive technology, and adaptive equipment to assist students, educators, and other staff with remote or hybrid learning, or to address learning loss. So I wasn't quite sure, Dennis, if one of those things, so it's not only a laptop or a Chromebook, but also software or some kind of program that you might need would also qualify as other ed tech. Tech ed, sorry.
Yeah, we've also seen like folks who are needing to purchase cameras so that they can film themselves for recording for remote or hybrid learning. So, and a stand that goes with it.
And headphones. We've seen headphones as well.
Yeah, so there's a whole kind of a bunch of other things that can fall into that. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
But Dennis, did that answer your question?
So it's only for hybrid learning?
Remote or hybrid learning, or to address learning loss.
Yeah, so that would be in person, Dennis, would be addressing learning loss. That can happen in almost any disposition.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So, yeah, so Kate asked the question, we're not going to have shipping labels for some items. What else would qualify? A packing slip. Yeah, and Kathy answered packing slips, not shipping labels would be your proof of receipt. And Kate, let's see if maybe, yeah, we won't have proof of delivery for many items. I think that that's a good question that you're raising, is particularly for, I'm guessing this is for backwards looking reimbursement. You may not have kept that. So why don't we, Cassandra and Kathy, take that as an action item for ourselves in terms of how we might be able to address that. Unless,
Yeah.
Cassandra, you've got a thought right now?
Well, no, I mean, we are actually working on it on the side. So if we can loop it back on that question, maybe go through a couple more and then
Okay,
let us have an opportunity to weigh in. Yes.
So this is the advantage of the remote learning, right? Or the remote work. Let's see, Linda asked, when we submit the application, are we submitting actual reimbursement amounts, or is it estimates and we submit actuals later with invoices? The latter, Linda. So you're submitting your best estimate, and then when you do your reimbursement request, that's where you need to be as specific as possible. So we would generally say in your application, you want to fully budget your allocation with your best estimates, and then the reimbursement piece will come in where you need to be specific and have your down to the dollars and cents.
And Jill, just Kathy clarified that for past reimbursement, that doesn't count. It's for the future looking.
Yeah. Kate asked the question, so for reimbursed computers, they must go through the transfer of title. And Kate, the answer is yes. For any kind of reimbursement, backwards or forwards looking, transfer of title is a requirement of the federal statute. So that is something that we have to do. Yeah, Cassandra.
Yeah, I just wanted to circle back to the question on the packing slips, because we do understand that particularly for those expenses that you've incurred in the past, I think what we've agreed on to sort of mitigate the risk will be that for past reimbursement, so things that have already occurred that you may not have retained that packing slip for, we're going to put an assurance on their reimbursement request saying that the goods were received. For future though, because we do want to make sure that we are as buttoned up as possible for future reimbursement, so those expenses that you're going to occur in the future, we're going to require that you do maintain packing slips. I know that there may be instances where a vendor does not send you a packing slip, and in that case what we would recommend is that you do have your own blank template that you can make sure that you kind of contemporaneously document the receipt of those goods when you're opening the box, and we would accept that. So I hope that helps.
Kate, did that help with your question? Yes, okay, great. And Eric, I see you've got your hands up. I'm just going to answer Linda's question really quickly. So transfer of title isn't really an issue with supplies that get used like masks. So this is also information that we got today. That's USAID calls those a consumable. We still need to do the transfer of title, and you'll want to somehow, with a sticker or something, identify, and you'll do an inventory list, right? So as I mentioned in the presentation, like, 50 boxes of latex gloves and 49 bottles of sanitizer, whatever that may be. And at the end, and you'll want to maybe do, Cassandra, you can jump in here, like a sticker system or something like that. At the end of a period of performance, the AOE is required to reach out to you and say, how many of those 50 boxes of masks do you have left over? And if you have any left over, then we will collect them. Cassandra, yeah?
Yep, nope, that sounds perfect.
Okay, I'm getting better at this every day. All right, Eric, you've been so patient. What's your question about staff payroll provisions? And you're muted.
Yeah, thanks. My question is, I understand that any possible support for something that includes salaries has to go through a procurement from the Agency of Education and not reimbursement. My question is, am I able to sort of propose programs that I want, that's like, oh, we're going to start an after school tutoring program. And so I can propose it And is the Agency of Education willing to sort of, okay, we'll support it, we'll take that on? How much latitude is there in that?
Cassandra, do you want to, I say you pop on. I'm going to.
Sure, I can kind of throw out some thoughts on that. I mean, I
Yeah.
think that you are exactly right, Eric, that it really is about the proposal of the idea versus the method of how we'll accomplish it that we'll want to discuss with you more in the consultation process. So you just said, like for your example, you said, we really want to be able to offer our students some sort of after school programming, maybe to assist with the learning loss. So then in consultation, we can figure out what the best way to do that would be. So what you can't do, though, we do know you can't pay your staff. So we know that's off the table. So it would come down to procurement, which we can look at a few different options, right? If perchance the folks that you have that are your staff are willing and able to act as independent contractors, the state may be able to engage into a contract with them as an independent contractor, understanding that the burden is then on them to act as an independent contractor and meet all of those tax implications that will come along with that. Or there's always the possibility that we could procure a service provider for that, like as Jill mentioned on that slide, where we would actually be able to procure outside services for that need. I think there's probably more than what I just said somehow, some way. But what we know for sure, you can't pay your staff. So we can't say that enough because we don't want to set you up there. But I think it's really great to think about the concepts and the idea of the need, and then we can all kind of work together to try to tease out the right way to do it that works for everybody. That's really what the nature of consultation is about. So I think to directly answer your question, are we willing? Of course we're willing. We're showing up at the table of consultation to be willing, right? Like we want you to be able to have these services and these supplies. We just want to make sure there's a way that we can do it that's going to work for everybody. Understanding summer is right around the corner. So summer programming, there are things that we're working up against, but of course everybody's willing when we show up at the table to fully kind of vet out these thoughts about what's the best way to do it, or maybe even the only way to do it in some cases. So yeah, I think that we're as interested as you are for that whole process. I think we're all going to learn a lot about how to get it done. Just in time for EANS 2, like Jill was saying, or whatever they're calling it, ARP EANS 2, whatever.
All right, and
Yeah.
and so just to say it again, so I understand, it sounds like if, say, one of my staff members is interested in running an after-school program or a summer program, they need to then sort of become an independent contractor to be running that program as an independent contractor supported by the approval of the AOE through the grant. Does that sound correct?
In a nutshell, right. We would not be able to, we can't pay you to pay them. And so we'll have to work on whether or not they would qualify to be an independent contractor. There are certain things that the state requires of independent contractors, and I am definitely not the person to go into that level of detail with you. But there are some certain things, certain levels of insurance that the individual has to have. There's other stuff. I'm just not entirely sure of all that it is, as well as that person would then need to meet the IRS requirements for being an independent contractor, which is outside of our scope completely. But yes, I mean, I think your staff is still open to decide whether or not they want to be an independent contractor of the state. I don't think there's anything that prohibits that. What we just know is that they can't do it through you.
Got it. Thank you.
And I see.
And that's,
I was going to say, I see Kathy's hand is up, so she may.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just wondering, Cassandra, you probably can answer this, but I'm just wondering, there's no reason or prohibition for the school to extend the workday. Like they can pay for their staff that's doing work. So there's nothing that prohibits them from saying, sure, if you would like to run the after school program, like you know, that's part of your salary and benefits, and compensate salary and benefits through school funds outside of the EANS funds.
Oh, of course, yes.
Sure.
We
Right.
don't have it. We would never limit that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to make sure it was clear that nobody was interpreting that
I got
as you can't run that way. You absolutely can run your school programs with your staff using your funds any way that you wish.
Is anybody aware of any other good places to apply for grant support for, an independent school to add programming through their own auspices, but there's some grant support for that?
Cassandra and I are smiling. We are literally working on this right now. It is one of our other tracks of work that we have going, Eric. So the Summer Matters big statewide initiative, it's sort of just been released around summer programming. Eric, I would say you're going to get a lot more information in the next, honestly, few days, frankly, probably, or the next couple of weeks. These things are coalescing really, really quickly.
Yeah.
But the Vermont After School program is really gearing up to do a lot of that work. And so Cassandra and I are involved in that, and we're talking about it before this meeting.
Okay, and how will we hear about that, or where do I look for that?
So I think you could start by going on the Vermont After School Summer Matters. They have this pretty impressive website that they've stood up in the last couple of days. And that's just outside of the scope of your school, if you have kids that need resources for summer, like that, I'm using it as a parent, frankly. And then in terms of financial, like funding support for those kinds of programs for independent schools, that is a question that I actually have out to our deputy secretary right now. So we're trying to identify that in real time right now, and we'll get that information out. Yeah, and then also, sorry, Cassandra, I will also just one more quick thing. There are many other programs. I may have mentioned this in our first office hours, but like if you have families or students that have like internet access issues or like broadband, whatever that may be, there are many, many programs available. And so if you have questions about that and you want to reach out to the AOE GEER EANS, and they can air traffic control it to me, and I can get you to the right person there. But there's lots and lots of programs that are run outside of AOE to support families and communities and students. So if you have a need, send it our way and we may be able to help you find a source for it. Yeah, Cassandra, do you want to add?
No, I was just going to say that I put the link in the chat. So I hope that it worked. I hope that I did that right.
Yeah, it's there.
Okay, perfect.
And folks, given our delay, we definitely don't mind going a little bit longer. If you all are willing to stick around, we can keep knocking out some questions. Kate, I do see, and Jordan, I want to get to I want to identify your question a little bit better, but Kate, I see your comment, and you have the comment, if laptops are under the AOE title, we have to buy them back, then it's not really a grant, we're just delaying the purchase. And you've hit something really important, that this isn't a grant program, right? So it's the federal statute sort of places really clear restrictions on kind of what we can and cannot do at the agency of education level. And yeah, Cassandra, do you want to add on to that?
Yeah, I'll just weigh in. You're right. It's not a grant program. However, maybe the difference here, the distinction that I can make for you, Kate, is that upon resale of the item, it would be at fair market value at that time. So there would be a significant difference in the cost of the laptop and then what you would end up paying for it at that time in 2023. So,
Yeah.
so it's not just a delaying of the purchase. There would be an expected significant difference in the cost.
Jordan, I see your question. This is the first time I saw that only a percentage will be reimbursed in certain categories, and I'm not sure what that means, because that is not the case. So I just want to make sure that we're addressing your concern. If you want to unmute or put more in the chat, that would be great. Yeah,
Jill, can I just jump in?
Mm-hmm.
this is Kathy again. So I believe the reference is on the reimbursement form. There's a percent that calculates at the end. And so that
Okay.
really is just the measure of how you're doing by category, because as we move through this, you're going to have an approved application that allows you to spend X amount in a couple of different categories. And as you start doing your planning and your purchasing and your reimbursements and your procurement, you may find like some significant shifts in those categories. And so this is the lever that we're using to look at whether or not there needs to be a correction to the application that would move those expenses back to the correct categories.
Jordan, did that answer your question or your concern? Don't know if Jordan's still here. Okay, if not, please put it in the chat and we can continue to work on it. Thanks, Kathy. Okay, so I see reasonable transportation costs. Can you expand on what this is? What is the best way to convey these costs? We actually were talking about this exact question before, so thanks for sending that in ahead of time. So some examples of reasonable transportation costs have been, say, additional busing in order to maintain social distancing. Some schools have had like, you know, staff members or the schools incurred costs in delivering meals. So I think that I would almost flip it back and say, can you tell us a little bit about what your cost is? And then we can sort of help you to frame that correctly. So I don't know if you wanted to unmute if you're available or put it in the chat and we can help a little bit more, or you can reach out to the email with sort of a description. But those are the kinds of things you would say. Again, in that budget line, you always want to sort of say what the cost is, how was it COVID related or COVID necessary, and then you know, the actual dollar amount. But there's quite a few things that can fit into there, like meal delivery or supplies has been one, additional busing. So yeah, if you wanted to reach out to us, we can probably help you with that.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. I'll probably be reaching out to you.
Okay.
Okay, it's Bettina. Thank you.
Thanks, Bettina.
Yep.
Okay, so Catherine, we hired an independent contractor to support students with remote learning. Would that qualify? So Catherine, are you saying that in the past you have hired that contractor?
Yes, in the past.
Okay, so that wouldn't, because you can't, well, no, I don't think that it would, right, Cassandra?
Right, because of
That
the
reimbursement piece, yeah.
right. Yeah, so there were a few of the allowable uses of the GEER EANS program that the federal government said could only be obtained through the procurement of the SEA, and that would be one of them. So that
And
would not qualify for
If we
reimbursement.
hired her, if we kept her on, would future costs qualify?
No, that, as I said, that has to be done through procurement. So the SCA, us at the Vermont Agency of Education, would have to enter into the procurement arrangement, the contract with that independent contractor. We can't reimburse the independent school for that type of activity.
But if they wanted to keep her on and do a new contract, they could partner with AOE and we would do the contract. Is that correct, Cassandra, through our procurement process?
Right, we would have to do the procurement, right. We can't reimburse the independent school for contracted service for that work. Either in the past or in the future, it has to be procured through the AOE. That's not our decision. That's a US Ed requirement on the funds.
It would be much easier the other way, Kathy.
So we would ask her to register with AOE, or what does that mean?
It's not entirely quite that simple. So we would have to procure it, and I'm not the procurement specialist, and I don't know if Shelley Matz is on the call right now, but you would work with Shelley through the procurement of the services. I'm not exactly sure how specific we can be on the vendor. I don't know, Jill. Those are questions that Shelley would have to answer. So
Okay, I'll talk to her.
Yeah, I do see Shelley's on here. And so
Oh, great.
Catherine,
I
yeah.
I am on. Hi.
Oh, Kelly, thank you.
It's hard to, there is a process, and during the application and the consultation, I will be reviewing items and then determining how to proceed from there. But I would be the one to actually reach out and do the contracting process with that potential contractor.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Catherine, you would put it under the allowable cost. I can't remember which one it is, but there's one that says like maintenance of learning during remote or hybrid, something like that. That's where you would put that cost under the procurement section of your application. And then that would trigger bringing in Shelley to partner with you.
Okay, sounds
Okay.
good. Thank you.
All right. Let's see. So Linda is feeling confused. Can you tell us how this works? How should we come up with the amounts of each of the 3 sections in the budget? I would estimate 50% will be reimbursement from the past year. So Linda, you don't need to do a laundry list of everything that you purchased in the past year. You would do sort of when you get into the application, for that allowable cost category for past reimbursement, let's just fake example, let's say it was PPE. You would go into that and you would put a short description that would say something like, we purchased child-size masks, rubber gloves, and disinfectant in order to meet health guidelines for in-person learning, and then the total dollar amount. Then when you did your reimbursement request, that's where you would do sort of the more detailed with your receipts and all of that. So we don't need that level of itemized detail in the application itself. We just need enough that our program team can look at it and say, yep, that looks like an allowable cost that's COVID related, and it fits within your budget allocation. That looks good. And if there's any questions and they feel like you need to add more detail, we don't need to know 72 gloves or anything like that. In the consultation process, they would let you know. But you shouldn't be too bogged down for the past reimbursement in terms of exactly how much you need to put in there. But as Kathy said, if you know that amount, like that exact amount for past reimbursement, you put in that exact dollar amount. Linda, did that help? I hope that addressed your question. Okay, sounds good. I see you there, Linda. So if you have any additional questions. Do folks have any other questions? I'm going to wait the important.
Hello?
8 seconds. Yes, hi there.
Yeah, hi. So I'm on the voice only. I have a quick question. So when we were talking about consumables, we have increased our connectivity with our internet and so forth, and we also have had increased garbage costs due to serving lunches in our classrooms and things like that. We're renting hand washing stations that are put in our hallways. These things aren't things that we can transfer title to, and we can ask for reimbursement for past costs, but going forward, are those things that we can ask for under that procurement and provision of services? How does that work?
Yes, so you had a bunch of different items in there. So for past costs for consumables, would you mind saying what those were again? I was trying to think really quickly.
Sure. Yep. No problem. We have increased garbage costs. We have monthly rental for hand washing stations that are in our hallways, and we increased our internet capacity.
Okay. Those are good questions. I don't know. Do folks on the team want to weigh in? Cassandra, do you have thoughts on that?
I don't have quick thoughts on it. I think that part of this is us learning what you're spending or what you're hoping to spend the dollar, you know, to receive for services or goods. So I think that that's really helpful. I think we could get back to folks on some of those more granular questions.
Yeah, the other one was garbage, increased garbage. So because I understand that, like, it seems reasonable that we would ask for reimbursement. I can see that. But the going forward, it seems like they all fall under this procurement kind of thing. Or are those reimbursable going forward? Because they certainly don't have any sort of title that we could transfer or.
Well, so let's just work through the process maybe a little bit here. So Jill, or anybody, what is the category that garbage disposal would fall under?
Yeah, so I think what's actually hanging me up is that it isn't the garbage these are like service costs. Is that correct? So you are paying a fee. I need to dive in a little bit. I think our program team does, and figure out if there's an allowable cost category that could fall under, right?
Okay.
Because I'm not sure.
It's not obvious to me right this moment.
It's not obvious to me.
That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know if anybody else on the program team has any initial thoughts, but would you mind sending us an email with those costs?
Sure.
We're probably not at our sharpest at the end of the day. But I want to sit down and really look at those costs and see if there's a way that we could fit those
them in somewhere. Yeah.
I mean, our intent is to try to make these work too. There's just certain things that we have to kind of.
Sure. Oh, no, absolutely. I understand that. So, okay. So who am I going to email this to?
Yeah, so we have a program team email, and so it's AOE.GEEREANS, GE.
Okay, the Vermont.gov, the one. Okay, gotcha.
That's our program team. We always have somebody on point answering and collecting all the tricky questions for us, and then we can reach back out to you and see what we can do. And if there's a way to fit that in a way that makes sense. But those are good ones. I like this.
Okay, and then my other question has to do with, at the beginning you talked about, when you were discussing the title transfer, and you mentioned that it's possible, let me see in my notes, something about if we have, there it is, other federal programs like Title II and whatnot, if we can prove that the items still have use, then we could apply to keep those items.
That's true.
Is there somewhere that I can read like the detail of that? Because obviously that's something that would be, as we're applying for 20, laptops or tablets, if there's the possibility in 2023 to say these are still being used and can we keep them, then that's obviously a pretty big deal.
Yeah, Cassandra, I think that's in the FAQs, but then is there also language that like the LEAs use for that kind of transfer, like under equitable services?
Right. So the important things to remember there are, one, if we do go down that path with you, the title to the goods or the laptops or what we're talking about does still remain with the Agency of Education. So we haven't broken that connection by that. But what it does mean is, one, you'd have to be participating in the equitable services program, like with your local LEA, your local education agency, which you do. Okay, not everyone. We don't anticipate that everyone in this program will. So that's an important thing to know. And then the other thing is the item that we're talking about. So if we're talking about a laptop, or we're talking about some supplies or a piece of equipment, would have to qualify for that program. So it would have to be something that you could, that we could determine was necessary, for instance, for a Title I equitable services program.
Okay.
Or for a Title IV, if you participate in Title IV. So does that make sense that we aren't determining today, and we can't determine today
Sure.
that would eventualize, right? Because it will
Right,
depend on the
it would be at
needs.
it would be at the end when we would be sitting there
right.
going, okay, is this? And so if it turns out no, then worst case scenario is we pay fair market value at that time.
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
And the reason, so we just can't tell you 100%, but that is
Sure.
a possibility that you're able to, we'll make that decision. We'll help you make that decision. The AOE will help you make that decision at that time when 2023 gets here, and we'll see if you're participating in equitable services and if that good is actually necessary for your equitable services program.
Okay. Okay, and then I think my last thing when you were talking about the indoor air quality, you said that that grant is still open.
Well, yes. So, sorry to laugh. This one's
no problem.
Always on the back of my mind. So we ended up with an $15 million left over at the end of the CRF grant from the LEA program. The agency recommended that it be moved into the indoor air quality grant because we knew that there was need. And since that time, which was back in December, January, it's been sort of tied up in the legislature. So it currently is sitting in, if anybody wants to go, track it down, in Bill H315, which is the kind of like COVID sort of emergency funding bill, which I hear every day will be voted on within the next couple of days.
Tomorrow.
Yeah, exactly. And but we have quite a bit of confidence that it will go through. It's been really popular. Everybody's in support of it. And so once that happens, then the program will kind of, we have to sort of reauthorize it and reopen it. But if you are an approved independent school, then you would be eligible to work with Efficiency Vermont potentially to get an indoor air quality project done. So particularly if you're looking at like, kind of the bigger cost projects, a new HVAC system, whatever that may be, that, could be a place for you to secure funding.
Okay, so that's nothing that we can do right now because that's not even, we're still waiting on that to kind of push to the final, thing.
We're this close.
And what does approved independent school mean?
So we have our two different categories of our approved, and I see Deb is on the call, so I'm going to make her jump in here. Our approved and recognized. So Deb, if you want to unmute and you can help to find that way better than I can.
Yep. Approved schools are ones that submit an application to the agency, and we review their program, write a report, and it goes to the secretary's office, and then the program is approved by the state board. Actually, I shouldn't say the agency approves it. The state board is the only authority that can approve the school, and by approval, that means that they are able to accept publicly placed tuition monies from either special ed funding or the ed fund, or both, depending on the program. And a recognized school is not authorized to receive gen ed money or special ed money, and parents generally are the ones who place the kids at recognized schools. Now, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because there's a lot of, I would take another hour just to describe the difference between the two programs, but that's in essence, an approved school requires specific compliance with board rules and statutory requirements, and they are able to accept public monies. And recognized schools generally recognized schools have parentally placed kids, and they cannot accept public monies for tuition.
Okay, so the likelihood, I'm calling from St. Francis Xavier School in Winooski, so we're tiny. So I'm assuming we are not an approved independent school, and that we would be only recognized.
Well, if you would know if you were approved, because you have to go through a renewal application every 5 years. And
Okay.
your
I
site,
can find out. That's not in my wheelhouse, but I can certainly find out.
well, I can, if you hold on a sec, if you want to move on to another question, I can't remember off the top of my, I think you're recognized, but let me just
Okay,
double
that would be
check
great
here.
if you can check.
Yep.
And I see Kate had a question.
No.
Got it.
Yep, sorry.
No worries.
You are an approved independent school, and you do have a renewal cycle every 5 years.
Okay, great.
There you go. So you would be,
thank you.
You would be an eligible applicant for the indoor air quality grant.
Okay, great. And so we will, I'm assuming you will be sending out to the same email list when that becomes a reality.
Yeah, I can make sure that communication also happens on that email list.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for answering my questions. Appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks for giving us the hard ones.
No problem.
Yeah, I can see we're already having side chats where folks are working on them. So, and Kate had a question. Can you expand on LEA? I don't believe we've participated before. So just to clarify, an LEA is shorthand for local education agency, which is your SUs and SDs. So Kate, what you would be participating in would be equitable services through the title funds. So like Title I, Title IV. So that is the program, and it would be done through your SU or SD. So I don't know if you participated in ESSER equitable services. You'd need to have like Title I eligible students. There's all kinds of details in that. But I don't know if you want to expand on your question a little bit, if that would help to clarify. Or you can always email us separately if you wanted to learn more. Are there any other questions? And again, thank you all for sticking around late. I'm sorry about the mix-up. Genuinely don't know what happened there. At one point I sent Robin back around to the same meeting. It was like Groundhog Day. So we really appreciate your patience on that. I'll do last call. Okay, so as I think Meg mentioned at the beginning of our office hours, we have been recording this. We will need a few days to do some closed captioning. Our hero for that is Laura Greenwood, who's on the team. And then we will, yes, absolutely. We will send out an email when it is posted up on the website so that you can refer back to it. And please continue to send those questions in. And you know, as you move forward and start to complete your applications, then we will be reaching back out to set up consultation and really move forward to, you know, approval and hopefully being able to support you all in your needs. So thank you all again and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.